Hello, everyone. I'm Trask Howard, Senior Gallery and Exhibitions Manager at Japan House, Los Angeles. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar. This is the second in a series of 3 webinars related to our ongoing exhibition, POKÉMON X KOGEI, Playful Encounters of Pokemon and Japanese Craft, which is on view in our gallery through January 7th, 2024. Today, we will be talking with Raden lacquerware specialist Terumasa Ikeda and metal sculptor Taiichiro Yoshida, whose innovative assimilation of science and technology in their craft delivered incredible results in their interpretations of Pokemon and the stories of Pokemon and their universe. To open the program, I would like to invite Japan House Los Angeles President Yuko Kaifu to share a few words.
Thank you, Trust. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's program related to our current exhibition, Pokemon X KOGEI, Playful Encounters of Pokemon and Japanese Craft. As many of you must have already visited or are planning to visit, our current exhibition was open to the public on July the 25th this year and will continue until January the 7th. And it's turned out to be very, very popular. The exhibition brings together 2 of the most celebrated art and culture assets of Japan. Pokemon, one of the world's biggest entertainment franchises, and Koge, exquisite Japanese craft that has evolved and have been refined over centuries in Japan. 20 Japanese artists in various fields, including, but not limited to lacquerware, ceramics, textiles, metalwork, and woodwork, were asked to use their skills and techniques to create their own artworks on the theme of Pokemon. One of them, and is going to be one of the speakers today, is Mr. Terumasa Ikeda. He's a lacquerware artist using Raden, or inlaid seashell, or mother of pearl. His inlay creations incorporated modern tools and techniques into Japanese craft to realize impressive detail and incredible beauty. Every time I stop by his artwork in our gallery, I feel so mesmerized and surprised with the delicate beauty and depth of his work. The other speaker, and of course one of the 20 artists, is Mr. Taiichiro Yoshida, who is a metalwork artist. He took on the challenge of creating Eevee and its original 3 evolutions, which were made of copper. And again, every time I go there to see his artwork, they look so alive, and I feel as if I were spoken to by all 4 of them. Today, both Terumasa and Taiichiro are going to share the background, process, and techniques that went into the creation of their artworks. At this time, I would like to extend our appreciation to our media sponsors, KCRW and LA East, and promotional partners, Animation is Film Festival and Starbucks Coffee. So please enjoy, and I'm looking forward to their talks as well. Back to you, Trust.
Thank you, Kaifu-san. So I'd like to briefly share an introduction to today's webinar series and our first artist. During each of our Artist Talk webinars, we will pair artists around a theme representing a commonality in their approach to presenting Pokemon through their craft. In today's webinar, we will hear from 2 artists who bring together science and technology and evoke the micro and the macro in unique and very different ways, in this instance, to deftly explore the world of Pokemon. Our first speaker is Mr. Terumasa Ikeda. With an interest in science fiction and Japanese animation, the underlying theme of Ikeda-san's work is information. His Raden lacquer artwork bridges the past and present, preserving Raden techniques, which he uses to embed decorative patterns expressing the unseen cyber world of information that surrounds us. After receiving his master's degree at the Kanazawa College of Art, Ikeda-san has set up his state-of-the-art studio in an Edo period residence in Kanazawa. Exhibiting in museums and international galleries, his work is in high demand from collectors. For this exhibition, he has created a collection of lacquer vessels appropriate for a classical tea ceremony that embody his ethereal visions of the invisible world of data transfer in the Pokemon universe. The drama of Mewtwo, created through genetic engineering, glistens on the surface of a palm-sized box. The mystery of unknown, like ancient writing, seems to take on layers of meaning, covering what looks to be a stone relic. The intricate Raden inlay of a Pokeball covers a small box to catch Pokemon of any size, and luminous shards of turban, abalone, and oyster shell capture glitching images of Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle on an elegant tea caddy. Now I'd like to invite Mr. Terumasa Ikeda to the screen, and serving as an interpreter for us today is Sky Whitehead, Chief Producer of Planning and Business Development at Japan House Los Angeles. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu.
おはようございます。池田です。
Good morning, everybody. My name is Terumasa Ikeda.
よろしくお願いします。
Great to be here.
では早速、始めさせていただきます。
So let's jump on in.
はい。池田輝正です。日本の、金沢というところで今制作をしています。
So my name is Terumasa Ikeda, and right now I have my studio where we produce works of art here in Kanazawa, Japan.
金沢という町はとても茶道やお花とか、華道ですね、とか、いろんな、古い文化がたくさん今も新鮮な形で残っていて、その中に、工芸が、根付いています。
So the city of Kanazawa is one which has many traditional arts, such as tea ceremony or Japanese flower arrangement, and also in many fresh and modern forms has a deeply rooted tradition in craft.
私の作品は螺鈿といって貝をとても薄くして、その輝きだけをこう放つように、工夫をした作品が多いです。
So my work is primarily in the area of raden or inlay, in which we take very, very thin pieces of shell and place them in ways that really brings out the luminescence of them on the surface of the object.
私が主に使うモチーフとして数字というものがあります。あとは、データとか電気信号とか目に見えないものを扱うことが多いです。
And in terms of the motifs, which are frequently employed in my work, we see often numbers, data, electronic signals, these types of things which actually cannot be seen by the eye.
こういう、工芸、日本の工芸、そして、漆というものは昔から将軍、殿様とか、あとはエンペラーのために、作られた技術を私は特に、扱っています。
And within Japanese craft, this category of urushi or lacquerware, which in the past was primarily a craft which was made to create objects for example, the shoguns or for the emperor. This is the material or the medium which I employ in my craft work.
日本のお茶文化もそうですが、こう器物、器に自然の模様ですね。植物だったり、あとは山や川だったり、そういったものを描くのが、歴史的にはとてもそれが伝統的なものでした。
And in the world of tea, where we're looking often at vessels, it has often been traditional that one would deploy various types of natural patterns on the surface. So these might be things like plants, mountains, or rivers.
しかし、今の時代では、私はベッドタウンに育って、大量生産、大量消費の社会の中で生きていて、それ以外の美しいものというものを 描くようにしています。自然以外のですね。
However, here in the modern times, and myself having born in kind of a dead town and in this consumerist era, looked to find what else or what other forms of beauty could be deployed in this type of work.
もちろん自然も大好きで、とても美しいと思っていますが、今この時代で、描くべきものが他にもあるんじゃないかと思って、このような作風になっています。
And of course, I love nature. I find it to be very beautiful. But I thought to myself that there must be other types of motifs that might be relevant to be used.
これも自然物なのか人工物なのかわからないような、とても大パーツのようなものを目指しています。はい。
And the work you see on the screen here, this is one where really the aim is to create something where it's difficult to discern whether it is an object produced from nature or something produced by man.
自然と人工とか、あとは、昔なのか未来なのか、いろいろどれも判別できないようなものを目指しています。
And so whether something is, for example, natural or man-made, whether it's something that might be ancient or from the future, the goal in my work is to create objects where it's very difficult to discern which they might be.
これも、ここのチップのところがとても小さい数字でできていて、一つ0.4ミリ角ぐらいですね。
So the work that you see on the screen, for example, the microchip looking area is made with very, very small pieces of material. They're actually assembled from numbers, each number about 0.4 millimeters wide.
この横に走っている回はとても薄くなっていて、0.03ミリぐらいで、とても薄いので、下の模様が透けて見えています。
And in this one, you can see the shell, which is inlaid on the horizontal axis. These are cut to be very, very thin. They're about 0.03 millimeters thick. And by cutting them so thin, they're actually able to show in a translucent manner the layers from underneath.
とても技術的には難しいんですが、その貝をとても薄くするという、難しいところを攻めることによって、自然物というよりも、液晶画面のような、色彩を放つよう努力しています。
And so the technique involved in doing something like this is, of course, very difficult. But by narrowing in on and refining that technique, we're able to take something which is natural, in this case, a shell, and create something that comes across much more, for example, like an LED or something that has this futuristic aspect.
こちらはこの間、ニューヨークの個展で、出した、対策です。
What we see here is an object which was recently featured in a solo show, which I had in New York.
これはおそらく6000から7000ピースほどの数字を1個ずつ手で貼っています。
And in this one, across the surface of this vessel, there's approximately 6,000 to 7,000 individual numbers, which have all been applied by hand to the surface.
私は一人で制作をしているわけではありません。スタジオには、たくさんの、アシストしてくれる方がいて、1日7名ほどで、作業をしています。
It's not the case that I'm putting every single one on myself in the studio where we produce these items. There's a number of people who assist me in a number of ways, and each day we work as a team with around 7 people together.
これが今回、ポケモン展で使用したアンノーンのパーツです。
What we see here are some of the parts that are used in the unknown object, which was included in the POKÉMON X KOGEI exhibition.
アンノーンのパーツをこうコンピューター上で、CAD で描いて、それをこの機械に流しています。
And what we do first is to create the shapes for these individual parts in CAD, and then we import that data into this machine.
今、これを映像で見せます。
I'll show you a short video here.
これはアンノーンではないんですが、数字の、シェイプになっています。
And this video is actually not of the production of the pieces for unknown, but actually cutting individual numbers for the facets of a different piece.
これは切り抜いているんではなくて、とても小さいドットでこう穴を開けて、います。
And this is actually not fully cutting out the individual pieces. It's actually tracing the outlines or perforating with very small dots across its surface.
それをこう水中に入れて、スーパーソニックを与えることによって、パーツを一つ一つ分解しています。
And then by submerging this in water and applying ultrasonic vibrations to that water, each of the pieces are then able to come apart and separate from each other.
それを一つずつこう拾って、きれいなものだけを選んで手で貼っていきます。
And we select each one for its beauty or for its individual qualities, and each of those are then applied one by hand.
これは針の先です。
And we're using the point of a needle here to apply and adjust.
私の制作工程はとりあえずこのぐらいになっています。それを漆を上に塗って、5回ほど漆を塗って、螺鈿を埋め込みます。
So this is kind of the process of getting the objects onto the surface. From here, we apply lacquer. We apply about 5 different layers of lacquer, which then envelop the inlaid pieces.
それをこうチャコールで研いで磨いていって、このように、きれいな状態に仕上がります。
And then we use charcoal to rub and to actually polish the surface, which then creates something beautiful and transparent like this.
で、これが何でできているかというと、日本のヒノキ、サイプレス、ヒノキという木を使って、とても薄くしなやかに、とてもこう丈夫なので、サイプレスを使うようにしています。
And in terms of the material that the vessel is made out of, we use Japanese cypress or hinoki wood. We cut it to be very thin in this very delicate shape, but it's also a very strong material, so that's why we select it.
ゼニガメ、不思議だね、人影の3匹の、生地ですね、母体です。
And so what we see here is the underlayment or the body, which then goes on to become the piece featured in the exhibition, which has Squirtle, Charmander, and Bulbasaur on its surfaces.
貝は虹色にこう光っているので、それの緑の部分だけを取ったり、赤い部分だけを取って、これは0.3ミリの、細さに切っています。
So the shell itself is iridescent like a rainbow. So what we do here is to cut and to separate the pieces which are greenish, the pieces which are red, and take each of these pieces, which are 0.3 millimeters thin, and to prepare them each to then be applied to the surface.
これをゼニガメや人影のシルエットになるように、そしてこうグリッチのような模様ですね。こう液晶画面の中こうバグが起きるかのよう。そんな、シルエットになるように一本ずつ並べています。
So what we do is then to apply them so that they create kind of the silhouettes here of Squirtle and Charmander. And when doing this, we apply them in a way that makes it almost like they're glitching, like an LED screen is undergoing some kind of an error in how the image is presented on screen.
人影はレッド、ゼニガメはブルー、不思議なのはグリーンになるように、とても気を使って、螺鈿を選びました。
And in selecting the material for the inlay of each of these, we're very careful to separate them out so that we can save the blue pieces for Squirtle, the red for Charmander, and the green for Bulbasaur.
螺鈿というものは構造色といって、見る角度によって色が変わるので、特に人影、レッドは、色が角度によって変わりやすいので、そういうのも見てもらえたら楽しめるかと思います。
And with the iridescent property of the shell, we find that when you look at it, the colors tend to shimmer and change. This is especially present in the red area of the spectrum of the iridescence. And so if you have a chance to see this in person, I hope you can really enjoy that aspect as you look at it.
これがミュウツーの原案、そのスケッチと、そしてミュウツーは全部数字の螺鈿を使って、ゲームボーイの画面になるような、そんなイメージで、そこにミュウツーのシルエットが浮かび上がってくるようにイメージしました。
So here we see the sketch or the original idea for the Mewtwo piece. And this one is made all with small numerical pieces that are intended to give kind of the look and feel almost of it appearing in a Game Boy screen.
出来上がったものがこちらです。いろんな色を使ってはいますが、全体的にエスパーの、紫色、ミュウツーの紫色になるようなイメージで螺鈿を選びました。
So here's the final piece. Of course, it has many different colors embedded into it, but they were selected really to give kind of this overall sense of the purple color palette.
ミュウツーは科学の力で、生まれたポケモンです。
So Mewtwo is a Pokemon which is born out of science.
内側は、その化学式のような、そういうイメージで作っています。
And so on the inside of the box, it's been created with a motif that's intended to kind of represent this kind of scientific or kind of chemical structure.
で、こちらがモンスターボールの、制作風景です。
Here we have a picture showing the creation of the Monster Ball piece from the exhibition.
実際にこんなボールはないんですけども、例えばいつか画面の中から出てきた、でも本当は体はいないけどという、サイバーティックなポケモンがいたとしたら、という気持ちで、サイバーボールみたいなものを作りました。
This one doesn't necessarily actually exist, but the idea was that if this Pokeball was to kind of come out of the screen, or if there was one that was intended for the capture of kind of a cybernetic Pokemon, that was kind of the inspiration for creating this piece.
私が考えるモンスターボールの形です。
So this is the kind of monster ball that is evoked in my mind when I marry this with my work.
ちょっと見えづらいんですけど、内側はピクセルでボールの形が描かれています。
It's maybe a little bit hard to see in this photo, but on the inside, the Pokeball motif is represented through kind of pixelated pieces of the mother of pearl.
出来上がると、このように、グリーン、ブルーの色合いになるように作りました。
And this is the final piece, and the final color palette would be comprised of these kind of blue and green elements.
そしてこれがアンノーンの、スケッチです。実は金のアンノーンで文字が描かれています。日本語なので、ちょっと分かりづらいとは思います。
So here we have the sketch for the unknown design. So this integrates various kind of Japanese alphabetical forms. So it might be a little bit difficult to understand.
そうですね。金色の螺鈿で、 アンノーンで数字を、じゃなくて文字を描いていて、昔、ゴールドシルバーのポケモンの金銀ですね。ゴールドシルバーの時の遺跡にあった文字を描いています。
So this one uses gold in the formation of the letters. And this harkens back to the gold and silver Pokemon and is intended to represent the old pieces from the Pokemon, the Iseki, the ancient remains.
そして、小さいアンノーンがこううごめいているようにたくさんこう周りを埋めています。
And so across the surface of this, underneath, we have many of these small, unknown kind of alphabetic runes embedded.
こう石に文字が浮かび上がってくるような、そんなイメージで作りました。
And this was made to kind of represent this idea that within a rock, that these runes are forming or glowing even from the inside.
内側はこんな感じです。なかなかこう、展示されている状態では見えないので、はい、ここでお見せできたらと思いました。
So this is what the interior looks like. When it's exhibited, you're actually not able to see this portion of it. So I'm delighted to be able to show what it looks like on the inside here.
これで私の紹介はおしまいです。ありがとうございました。Thank you.
So that concludes the introduction of my work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ikeda-san. The transformation from rough work in process to the finished piece is really spectacular. I really enjoyed seeing the work progress through your slides. Incorporating your decorative vision of the data world into traditional utensils with a very old, almost ancient history is quite an interesting combination. It creates a sense of wonder about the origin, as you mentioned. Is it from nature, from the human hand? When or where did these objects come from? It really connects the past, as I said, to your fascination with the future, and I can see that. It really parallels also the practice of the artisans of the Edo period who choose motifs from the beauty and importance of their contemporary in their time, I guess, their contemporary environment of the time to adorn their objects. It's so interesting that you're doing this work in a location with a very deep connection to the Edo period and Edo period artisans and artistry. We look forward to more with you during the Q&A. We have questions for you, so we look forward to speaking more with you later. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to now introduce Taiichiro Yoshida, an accomplished metalsmith who uses silver, bronze, and copper to form multitudes of small plates depicting leaves, flowers, butterflies, which he then assembles together to create expressive three-dimensional portraits of animals. Yoshida-san earned his bachelor's and master's degrees in metal carving at Tokyo University of the Arts. In his process, he takes great care to connect his material to his subject using natural metals which relate to the essence of his subjects and often incorporating metals or materials actually from the actual animal itself. For this exhibition, Yoshida-san took on the challenge of creating Eevee and its three original evolutions. Choosing copper for this material as the color and patina of copper can evolve in different ways depending on the exposure to specific elements, such as electricity, fire, liquid, water, gas, such as ammonia, all producing a unique color or patina change in the copper. Therefore, Yoshida-san's creative process is very compatible with the essence of Eevee and its evolutionary lineage of Vaporeon, a water-type Pokemon, Jolteon, an electric type, Flareon, fire type. And as you'll see, the shape of the unique pieces Yoshida-san used for each evolution also echo their evolutionary energy. With that, I'd like to welcome Yoshida-san. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu.
吉田です。よろしくお願いします。
My name is Yoshida. Great to be here today.
それでは、今展覧会の作品についてスライドで、紹介させていただきます。
So I'd like to share some slides today about my pieces in the exhibition.
私は、2013年に東京芸術大学工芸科を修了し、そこで彫金を学びました。
So I graduated from Tokyo National University of Fine Arts and Music in 2013 with a degree in crafts where I studied metal carving.
彫金は主に金属を使用した装飾技術で、タガネという棒状の単足を使用して金属を加工します。
So this kind of metal carving or engraving, this is a decorative technique employing mostly metal and working the metal using a chisel. It's a bar-shaped piece of carbon steel.
私はこのタガネを研究し、後でちょっとご説明するんですが、定抜きタガネっていう道具を考案しました。
So I studied the chisel that's used in this art form, and I'll explain it a little bit in more detail later. But I created a special or invented a special tool called a jounuki chisel.
この定抜きタガネを用いて金属の破片を切り抜き、装飾的に群衆させた彫刻を制作しています。
And so using this chisel, what I'm able to do is cut out different pieces of metal and cluster them together in order to create sculptures.
この写真はハイエナをモチーフにした作品です。
And what you see on your screen right now, work which I created employing a hyena motif.
これはボルゾイをモチーフにした作品です。
What you see here is a work employing the motif of borzoi, which is a type of dog.
このように大学を卒業後は動物作品を中心に、作品制作を続けてきました。
And continuing this line, since graduated from university, I've been creating mainly works of different types of animals.
金属は自然物の素材として、地球上で存在してますが、現代において機械や建築など人工物として認識されることが多いです。
So, metals, when we think about them as a material, they're actually natural objects. But in modern times, they're often recognized or thought of as man-made objects in, for example, machinery or architecture.
そのような人工物としての金属で、こういった生き物を作る際が面白く感じています。
And for myself, I find this process of taking these metals and to create these living creatures from them to be very interesting.
また、装飾工芸を学んだ経験から、物体の全体の形とその表面を構成する小さい細胞のようなマクロとミクロの関係性に興味がありました。
And from my experience studying decorative arts and crafts, I was really interested in this kind of relationship between the macro and the micro, this almost kind of cell level structure and how they relate on the surface.
装飾素材としての金属は物体に付加価値を与えて、そのことにより内面と外見の二面性が生まれます。
And using metal or as a decorative material on these types of objects itself is something that adds value. And this creates kind of an interplay between the inside and the outside.
自分の作品制作は中身と外見だったり、マクロとミクロのような二元的な考えを主題として制作してきました。
And a lot of the work that I do is really about this kind of duality between the interior and the external look, the macro and the micro, these types of motifs.
今回の展覧会では、EV、サンダース、シャワーズ、ブースターを選びました。
For this exhibition, I chose the 4 Pokemon of Eevee, Jolteon, Vaporeon, and Flareon.
ポケモンで特徴的なのが進化だと思います。
And I think what's really kind of characteristic or stands out about Pokemon themselves is this evolution that they go through.
進化は経験の蓄積や成長、結果であり、とても特別なものです。
Evolution itself is kind of the accumulation of experience and growth. It is a result of those things. And in that way, it's something that is very special.
子供の頃、ゲームをプレイした記憶から、当時 EV はある場所の人からしか、もらうことができなくて、 ゲーム上では1匹しか存在しませんでした。
And I remember from playing the game as a child, there was only one Eevee in the game. It was something that could be only acquired from a particular person at a particular place and was singular.
その1匹から進化の石をどれにするか選んで進化させます。
And from that one singular Pokemon, using an evolution stone, you chose which direction it would evolve.
一度進化させると元に戻すことはできません。
And once you evolved it, it could not be reversed or undone.
進化という特別な現象を一度しか選べない、その選択の難しさがすごい記憶に残ってました。
And I really remember this kind of difficulty of choosing this kind of special phenomenon of how it would evolve, knowing that I couldn't go back.
ポケモンにおいて EV は進化という観点でとても象徴的に感じます。
And it seems to me that within Pokemon, Eevee is very kind of symbolic in terms of evolution.
そして銅を主体的に扱う自分にとって加工方法や着色方法が EV とその進化系統と親和性が良かったためです。
For me, somebody who primarily works with copper, how to make the processing and coloring methods in a way that's compatible with Eevee and its evolutionary permutations was something that was very interesting.
ここからの作品2つご紹介するんですが、ポケモンを作るための修作として作ったものです。
I'm going to share a couple of works here on screen. These two works are actually made as studies for thereafter creating the Pokemon.
いきなり大型の四足歩行の生き物を作るのはちょっと不安があったためです。
I was a little bit uncertain about suddenly taking on this giant task of creating these four kind of beautifully sculpted bodies.
これは三毛猫をモチーフにした作品で、眼球の見え方とかポーズを試しながら作ったものですね。
So this one is based on the motif of a tortoiseshell cat and was kind of a study in terms of how the eyeballs look and the pose that it strikes.
これはサンダースのベースとなったものです。
And this became the base for the Jolteon Pokemon.
これはウサギをモチーフにしてます。
This one is the motif of a rabbit.
シャワーズのベースとなったもので、寝そべってる雰囲気を見ています。
So this became the base for Jolteon, and I was trying to work with this kind of vibe of it laying down like this.
ここから4体の制作過程となっていきます。
So from here, I'll get into the process of creating these four Pokemon.
まず、それぞれのポケモンのポージングや表情を考えて、そのイメージに合わせて主観的な構想を練るところから始めています。
So the first thing is to kind of think about the poses, the facial expressions of each Pokemon, and from there to kind of develop a subjective idea that aligns or that flows from that image.
同時にドローイングを行って、イメージをより具体的に形にしていきます。
And at the same time, we start kind of sketching to give a little bit more of a concrete form to these thoughts about how they would look.
この写真はそれぞれの最終的な小さい下図です。
And so what you see here in this photo are the final small drawings of each Pokemon that were created.
これは等身大事の下図で、ポーズとかプロポーションに違和感がないか確認しているところですね。
So this is now the life-size drawing that was created next. And this is done to be able to kind of carefully check for any discrepancies that you might find in the pose or the proportions.
ある程度決まったら、マケットを作っていきます。
And once we've made some kind of decisions to bring that together, then we start to make a maquette or a model.
EV ブースターシャバーズのマケットですね。
Here we have the maquettes for Eevee, Flareon, and Vaporeon.
子供の頃犬を飼ってたんですが、飼っていないときはどうしてもイメージで可愛いや楽しそう、心強さなど結構いいところしか見えないんですけれど、現実一緒に生活すると生き物のいろんな感情、表情、姿、形に触れた記憶があります。
I had a dog, and as a child, and through that I could kind of know about dogs and how cute and fun and reassuring they can be, and also how when you live with a dog, there's a lot of emotions that you're exposed to through them.
じゃれたりすることによって、鋭い歯とか、目やにがあったり、鼻のシワが見えたり、うなった表情が怖かったりします。
When you play with them, you can see things like their sharp teeth, their eye sockets, wrinkles in their nose, and there are different types of expressions like snarling.
現実でポケモンと対峙することは、可愛いだけでなく、そういった側面も受け入れることなのかなと思っています。
And thinking about this idea of encountering Pokemon in real life, made me think that it's not necessarily only about them being cute, but also about accepting and recognizing these different aspects that might be in their physicality.
マケットが完成したら、それに合わせて等身大サイズでスタイルフォームを削っていきます。
So once the maquette is completed, the next thing that we do is to cut styrofoam to create a life-size object.
シャワーズとブースターです。
Here we have Vaporeon and Flareon.
EV ですね、これは。
And this is EV.
結構顔が重要だと考えているため、油粘土で結構入念に等身大で制作します。
I consider the face to be really important. And so I create life-size models of the face using an oiled clay.
左からシャワーズ、サンダース、ブースターです。
From the left, we have Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon.
サンダースとブースターの口の中は銅板から作り上げてます。
So for Jolteon and Flareon, this is the creation of the interior of the palate. These are made from copper plates.
近郊の伝統技法である打ち出しという技術を応用してタガネで成形していますね。
And these are created by a chisel using a metalworking technique, which is traditional, which in Japanese is called a uchidashi.
この写真はサンダースの口の中です。
This photo here shows the interior of the mouth of Jolteon.
これはブースターの口の中の写真です。
So here we have the mouth of Flareon.
これは定抜きタガネにする模様のドローイングです。
So here we have a drawing showing the pattern, which is then deployed into the Jounuki chisel.
それぞれのポケモンの属性をイメージしてドローイングを進めていきます。
And each of these drawings are created kind of based on the characteristics of that Pokemon itself.
最初は鉛筆で描いてたんですけれど、徐々に筆に変えていきました。
So at first I drew these shapes with a pencil, but then over time refined them and into drawing them with a brush.
結構筆の方が思いもよらない線が出るというか、それが結構面白く感じました。
And this is because when drawing with the brush, there's kind of some more unexpected lines, etc., that kind of come out of drawing with it. And I found that to be really an interesting byproduct of using the brush.
左がサンダースで、右がブースターのタガネのドローイングですね。
So on the left is a drawing from Jolteon, and on the right is a drawing for the chisel shapes for Flareon.
左が EV、右がシャワーズのドローイングです。
This drawing shows the same with EV on the left and shapes for the for Vaporeon on the right.
サンダース、ブースター、シャワーズは結構ドローイングはしやすかったんですが、EV は無属性ということもあって結構悩みました。
So Jolteon, Flareon, and Vaporeon were relatively easy to draw because their attributes are quite kind of characteristic of how they look. But I was much more worried about how to draw Eevee because in a way it lacks some of these specialized recognizable attributes.
結果的には何もない属性を逆転させて何にでもあり得る属性と、解釈しました。
So what I did in the end is to kind of turn on its head this idea of the attribute of nothing and to draw shapes and create things that could be almost anything. That was my interpretation.
それは進化の可能性の存在として EV を考えることができます。
By doing so, this allows us to kind of think of EV as something which holds pure potential for evolution.
EV の無属性は様々な属性の進化先がある多様性だと考えて、ポケモンに存在するあらゆる属性を入れることにしました。
So thinking of this idea that EV's kind of nondescript attributes represent a diversity of potential evolutionary destinations, I decided that this could kind of include every attribute that exists in Pokemon.
そのドローイングをもとに上抜きタガネを作っていきます。
So then, based on these drawings, what I do is to mold and create the Jounuki chisel.
このタガネは前例がなく自分自身で考案したもので、上抜きタガネと名付けました。
So this chisel is actually something with no precedent. It was invented by myself, and I gave it this name, the Jounuki chisel.
上タガネっていう同じ模様を打つタガネと、抜きタガネという同じ形を切り抜くタガネが存在し、それを合わせて作り上げたタガネです。
And so there's a couple of types of chisels. There's a Jou Tagane, or a Jou chisel, which is one that creates a shape in a pattern. And then there's a Nuki Tagane, or a Nuki chisel, which is one that's used to cut out the same shape. So the Jounuki combines them both.
この写真は成形した炭素鋼を彫り込んでいる写真ですね。
So the photo which you see on screen shows the process of engraving onto, or engraving the form into the carbon steel.
サンダースのタガネです。
So here we have some examples of the chisels used in the creation of Jolteon.
ブースターのタガネです。
And here we have some of the same for Flareon.
一番太いので45ミリぐらいありますね。
And the largest one in this case has a diameter across it of around 45 millimeters.
シャワーズのタガネです。
And here we have the chisels for Vaporeon.
これが EV ですね。
And here for Eevee.
最終的にすべて紹介したのは一部分なんですけど、すべてのタガネは合計90本近くぐらいになりました。
So what I've shown you here today is actually just a sampling of the different chisels which were created for these objects. In total, for the 4 Pokemon which were created, there were about 90 chisels that were made.
この動画はその上抜きタガネを使用して銅板を切り抜いてます。
So this video which I'll show here shows the use of the Jounuki chisel to cut out forms from the copper plate.
切り抜いた破片を量産している写真です。
So here's a photo that shows this kind of large-scale production of many of these different cut-out pieces.
銅板そのままの色はこのようなピンクから茶色をしています。
So the color of the copper plate itself is this kind of range of pinkish to brown.
パーツの数はブースターが一番多くて16,000個以上になりました。
So in terms of the number of parts, Flareon is the one that has the most, somewhere around 16,000 pieces.
ここから着色の工程です。
From here, I'll talk a little bit about the coloring process.
これは EV のパーツですね。
So this shows the parts for Eevee.
ほぼ銅板そのままの色なんですけれど、ピンクがちょっと強いなと思ったので、ちょっと茶色く着色してあります。
The color is almost the same as the copper plate itself, but in the original copper plate, the pink is a little bit too strong, so we worked to tint it and bring out this subtle brown color.
サンダースのパーツです。
Here's a photo of Jolteon's parts.
左のようにクリップに一つ一つパーツを挟み込んで、金メッキ浴槽に入れて、電気を流して、金を銅板表面に析出させる前の写真ですね。
So the photo on the left, you can see that they're placed one by one into a clip. And this shows before when they're put into a gold plating bath. So this is done where they're inserted into the liquid, and through the application of electricity, gold is deposited onto the surface of the copper plate.
ブースターのパーツです。
These are parts for Flareon.
左の動画はブースターの赤色の作り方です。
And the video, which we'll show here on the left, shows the creation of this red color on the pieces.
古くからの伝統技法で非道と言います。
So this is a traditional technique, which in Japanese is called hido, or roughly translated scarlet copper.
バーナーでこう銅板を赤く熱し、急冷することにより、銅板が真っ赤に発色します。
And by taking the copper sheet and heating it to red hot using this burner, and then by cooling it very rapidly in the liquid, it creates this vibrant red color.
これはシャワーズの青の着色途中ですね。
This photo here shows the process of coloring Vaporeon in blue.
銅板に特殊な液体を塗布し、サビの一種である緑青を表面に発生させます。
So in this case, a special liquid is applied to the copper sheet, and this creates kind of a greenish blue. It's a type of rust on the surface.
それにアンモニアガスを当てて反応させると、このような青色を発色します。
And when applying ammonia gas to it, a reaction occurs that creates this blue color.
まとめると、4体のポケモンの着色方法はこのようになります。
So to summarize, the coloration of these 4 Pokemon is as you see on the screen.
EV をこう銅板の色をそのままとして、サンダースは銅に電気を流して着色しています。
So Eevee starts with the color of the copper plate itself. And in the case of Jolteon, the coloring is done by passing electricity to the copper.
ブースターは銅を炎で加熱して着色しています。
Flareon is created by applying flame to the copper.
シャワーズは銅に特殊な液体を塗布して青色に着色しています。
And Vaporeon is created by using a special liquid and applying that to the copper.
EV からこう進化の石でそれぞれの属性を有する3体の進化と銅を主体とする色作り方法に親和性がありました。
And so in this way, there was kind of an alignment between the evolution of Eevee into its 3 bodies, each with its own type of Pokemon, and the evolution stones, which would do that, and the method of coloring the copper itself.
EV をこう銅のメタファーとして表現することは、金属工芸の着色技術ととても相性が良かったです。
And I feel that expressing Eevee kind of as a metaphor for copper was compatible with then the coloring techniques from metalwork, which came from it.
ここから眼球についてです。
From here, a little bit about the eyeballs.
眼球は銅板とガラスでできており、尻尾焼きという伝統的な技術を応用しています。
The eyeballs are composed of copper plates and glass, and these are brought together through a traditional technique of enamel or koe-san.
作るポケモンのイメージに合わせてドローイングしている写真ですね。これはサンダースです。
So this is a photo. This is of the eyes for Jolteon. And first I start with drawing with kind of my imagined look and feel for this Pokemon's eyes.
イメージが固まったら制作に入っていきます。
And once the kind of image of how this will look is kind of fixed, we go into the production phase.
右が眼球の色を作っている画像で、左はその色ができたガラスに成形したレンズを乗せて焼成する前の写真ですね。
So on the right, you can see the color of the eyeball that's being made. And on the left, a lens which is about to be fired and which will be placed on top of the colored glass.
眼球が完成した写真で、左がブースター、右がサンダースですね。
So what you see are the completed eyeballs on the left for Flareon and on the right for Jolteon.
組み立ての写真になっていきます。
So here are some photos of the assembly.
一つ一つ、パーツを刺していくので、組み立てはとても大変です。
So each of the metal parts are then inserted to apply them. It's a very painstaking process.
この状態で、現実世界に存在し始めるので、サンダースのイメージと自分のイメージのズレがあって、結構苦労します。
And this is the first time that they kind of come to life, in the real world. And in the case of Jolteon, the form and how I had imagined it there was a little bit of discrepancy between them. So it was quite a challenge to bring it together.
ブースターですね。
Here we have Flareon.
ブースターは単純な大きさもあったんですけれど、尻尾のモフモフがとてつもない表面積で、切り出したパーツがもう全然足りないっていう状況で、本当に大変だった作品ですね。
So Flareon was smaller in size, but the fluffy tail itself has an incredible amount of surface area, and the parts which had been prepared for this weren't enough at all. So creating those parts and assembling this was a real challenge.
シャワーズですね。
Vaporeon.
前の2体に比べると、パーツの形もあるのか、ちょっと組み立ては結構スムーズでしたね。
So compared to the previous two, the assembly was a little smoother because the parts themselves were smoother as well.
ヒレの表現にちょっと問題があって、自然な表現方法の落としどころにすごい悩みました。
However, how to express the fins, this was a little bit problematic and had to find a way to be able to represent them in a way that felt natural.
これは EV です。
Here's Eevee.
EV は結構ちっちゃいんですけど、パーツもちっちゃくなるんで、あんまり大変さは変わらないですね。
So Eevee itself is smaller, but the parts needed to fit onto its surface are also smaller. So in terms of difficulty, it was about the same as the others.
完成した写真でサンダースと EV ですね。
So here's the finished picture. We have Eevee with Jolteon.
EV です。
Eevee.
ブースターです。
Flareon.
これがシャワーズです。
And Vaporeon.
自分の作品は結構いつも等身大のサイズを意識しています。
So in my work, one thing that I try to keep top of mind is to create something of the correct scale and size.
今回の4体もサイズは等身大に近づけており、ポケモンと対峙するっていうことを意識して鑑賞していただけると嬉しいです。
And so this time we worked very hard to create each of these at their actual scale representative to each other. And so I hope if you have a chance to see them, you'll be able to enjoy that aspect of how they relate in size as well.
スライドは以上となります。最後までご覧いただきありがとうございました。
So this is the end of my photos. Thank you for watching all the way to the end.
Thank you, Yoshida-san. Oh, wow, that was amazing. I found myself envisioning the way the plates will flow and wondering, will that flow change as the piece comes together? You embody that evolution of Eevee so well in your process for these pieces. There's also, they really seem to be created out of the environment of your subject, and that comes out so well also in the Pokemon works. There's a wonderful sensitivity in the personality that you impart in your subjects, and the Pokemon works really have that personality, a very fluid feel to them, embodying the potential movement and connection to their core elements of fire, electricity, and water. I know we're going a little long, but I do want to get to questions today and would like to invite Ikeda-san back. Has the experience creating your work for the Pokemon exhibition influenced your continuing work? Were there any new elements or techniques you used in your Pokemon works? that you will use moving forward?
そうですね。今まで私の作品は、具象的なモチーフをあまり使ってきませんでした。抽象的というか、何かの形、作り出すっていうことをあんまりしてこなかったので、今回、ゼニガメのシルエットとか、不思議種のシルエットを螺鈿で描いているときは、とても普段やらないので楽しかったです。
So in the work that I've created so far, I've tended to represent things which were abstract, not necessarily figurative. In the work that I did this time, to represent the silhouettes, for example, of Squirtle and Bulbasaur was something that was actually really interesting to endeavor.
そして何より、ポケモンというコンテンツとして、若い、子供が、僕の個展、エキシビジョンにも来てくれるようになって、日本の伝統的な工芸っていう世界を知れる、とてもいい機会になったんじゃないかなと思います。
And then additionally, through more than anything, working with this type of motif, the Pokemon content has created this opportunity for people who are young, children especially, to come to my solo exhibitions, my shows, and to be exposed to the world of traditional Japanese crafts. So that also has been very interesting.
Wow, thank you. I'd like to kind of follow up on that in a moment and come back. But I would like to ask Yoshida-san this similar question. Did this process with the Pokemon exhibition bring out a new element or technique in your creation process? You've used plant motifs in the past. These motifs that you use for the plates for Pokemon are slightly different, but Eevee did have some plant motifs in it, I understand. For example, the chisel you invented, it seems amazing. Did this idea come to you once you started the collaboration with Pokemon?
そうですね。その植物からより装飾的な方向に行くようになりましたね。ポケモンをやった影響で。
So firstly, with the influence of Pokemon, these plant motifs, I think, if anything, evolved in a way that made them more decorative in nature and how they were deployed.
やっぱりその工芸の、いわゆる僕は金属なんですけど、その素材と属性っていうなんか別視点で考えることが結構、影響が大きいかなと思っています。
And within Kogei, this kind of process of considering in this case, I work with metal and its characteristics, typically you think separately from that of what you're creating.
で、その定抜きタガネに関しては、やっぱり今までで一番太いタガネを初めて制作したっていうのもあって、ちょっと技術的にはすごくまだまだ伸びしろは感じる結果になりましたね。
So in terms of the Joniku chisel, we actually created the largest diameter one that we ever had for the purpose of this, but really felt the potential to continue to improve and grow it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I guess there's a connection with these, trying new things and also continuing these craft processes, traditional craft techniques, and helping them evolve and continue on. So we had a question for both Ikeda-san and Yoshida-san. You're both trained in traditional craft techniques, but you've developed your own individual techniques for creating unique contemporary craft. Are you teaching these techniques to other artists? So I think, can I begin with Ikeda-san? I know he has 7 assistants, so there must be some passing on of information and technique.
私が、扱っている技術に関しては、あの、最先端の例えばコンピューターとかを使った技術で、を活かしていますけども、特段その伝統的な工芸という目線で見ると、こう変わったことをしているかというと、本当にそのコンピューターのもの、その技術を加えただけなんですね。
So, in terms of the techniques that I'm deploying in my work, I am using computers, for example, as a part of the work. But in terms of the actual craft component of what I'm doing, aside from using this as a tool along in the process, the actual techniques that are being used in the creation of these objects are themselves very much still traditional.
そう技術を教えるところは結構日本にはいっぱいあるんです。
And there are actually many places in Japan that are continuing to carry on and to transmit these types of techniques in this traditional craft realm.
だけど私が伝えたいこととしては、何をこう未来に残していくかということを考えると、こう昔と同じその伝統的なものを現代で作っても、やっぱりなかなかこう今の時代には馴染まないという問題があります。
But I think what I want to express is that even if we create objects which are very traditional, they don't necessarily fit the lifestyles or the tastes of the modern age. And so that's the problem that we face.
今の子供だったり、若い人だったりが興味を持ってもらえるようなものを作らないと、この先生き残っていく、その要するに時代に負けてしまうと思っています。
And I think that it's important to create things that the kids, the youth of today, all will be very interested in. And unless we're able to do that, then we kind of surrender to this march of time and lose to it.
Thank you, Ikeda-san. I feel your work is already being made for the kids of tomorrow. It's so futuristic. So I'm sorry, Yoshida-san, I'd like to also give you an opportunity to talk about how you're working to pass on or share your technique.
僕自身まだ全然悩み中ではあるんですが、ポケモン作って、すごい空想の存在と現実を行き来している感覚がすごいあって、なんか現代のデジタル社会の中と、まあ自分のアナログ的な行為の行き来にも結構リンクするところもあって、なんか今の時代、これをやるっていうのもすごくより考えた経験になってます。
For myself, this process of working with the Pokemon realm takes, this thing that is, kind of from the intangible world and making it real, much like this world where we live, where there's the digital world, which continues to grow, in the analog realm that I work in. And so that interplay was very interesting.
それで、日本の彫金はすごい伝統と格式をすごく重んじる分野なんですけど、悪く言っちゃうと、それじゃなくちゃいけないっていう、アカデミック的な教育がすごく強くて、そこからより抜け出るかっていうのが自分の中でずっと課題としていて、それを見た人に何か示せればいいなと思いながら普段作ってます。
And so in this world of this metal work that I do, there's this interplay between the traditional and the modern, and this idea that things have to be made or represented in a certain way, which often has kind of this very academic underpinning. And so to be able to go beyond or outside of that, and for people who see it to recognize that's something that I would like to aim for.
Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one more short or two more short questions. Ikeda-san, one question for you. On average, how long does it take to complete a piece? For example, the Pokeball box.
あれは小さいので4、5ヶ月ぐらいですかね。もうちょっとかかったかな。はい。構想から考えると、まあ7ヶ月ぐらいはかかってるかもしれないですけど、はい。
So that piece is relatively small. So I think that one probably took about 4 to 5 months. If you consider the process of also the conceptualization and the planning for it, probably something like this, around 7 months.
Thank you. And for Yoshida-san, did you ever think of other evolutions of EV in this process? Or would you like to create another evolution?
そうですね、いわゆる V's は、他のブラッキーだったり、エイフィーだったり、別の着色方法とまたリンクするポケモンがいるので、まあ、オーソドックスに言うと、まあ、エイフィー、ブラッキーあたりは作りたいなとは思っています。
Thinking about the evolutions of EV and how to marry this with the process, for example, Ifi or Black Key, these are ones that I think would be interesting to represent through metalwork.
Thank you. I think the English for Black Key is Umbreon, and I don't know the other one. Perhaps it was Leafeon. I'm not sure. But with that, thank you very much, Yoshida-san. Thank you very much, Ikeda-san. I'm afraid it's time for us to wrap up. And on behalf of everyone joining us today, I'd like to thank you both, and to Sky for interpreting for us today. ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。